actually 2012, the city of Flint got their water, or up until 2012, the city of Flint got their water from Detroit, from the Detroit water system. Rather than renegotiate the rates with Detroit, they were put under pressure by Governor Snyder, a Republican, and the heads of the state legislature, who were Democrats, to, instead of renegotiating their terms with Detroit, instead sign a contract with the KWA, which was a new stimulus program, jobs program to create a new, vastly expensive water pipeline that would provide water to different municipalities. In the meantime, they would open up their old toxic mothballed facility that they hadn't used in decades, that had been closed down because it was toxic, and get water from the toxic Flint River to supply their water. They were told by the experts that this was a terrible idea. They were told by the experts that there would be lead in the water. They were told by the experts that at a cost of roughly $140 a day, which is basically a rounding error for the water budget, that they would need to add an anti-corrosive agent to the water, which is what they do in Detroit, so that the water wouldn't be toxic and kill people. Instead, they ignored all of that and let the water start to flow. Within a matter of weeks, people were reporting increases in headaches and other neurological symptoms. Within a matter of months, people were dying. Also within a matter of months, companies like GM and other companies that were testing their own water immediately stopped using Flint water because they saw that the rates of lead and other contaminants were way past any kind of safe levels. They alerted the state and city officials, who did nothing. They didn't tell you, they didn't do anything. They just let the water continue flowing into your homes. What happened next? People started showing up to city council meetings and press conferences with jugs of brown and gray water, daring anyone who would like to drink it, and saying, "This came out of our taps. Would you like to drink this water?" In response to that, and in response to reports that we now know from both the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and from the EPA, that the water was indeed toxic and had several times passed the safe rate for lead and other contaminants, your mayor got up, Mayor Walling got up and drank some water and said, "Oh, this water's fine." Now, his water wasn't gray or brown. It was perfectly clear like this. And he said, "Oh, this water's fine. I drink it every day. Everything's fine." They knew that was a lie, and they still continued feeding you the water. Even as the rates of stillbirths went through the roof, grew exponentially, even as the rates of death went up, even as every single indicator showed that this was unhealthy, and it was becoming where the general public knew it was unhealthy, they continued to deny it for years. And now look where we are. Now a $600 million settlement, which the people who have gotten that money deserve that and much more. They deserve far more than that. But guess who's paying for that money? You are. Raise your hands if you've ever paid taxes. We won't pander to the people who say that they haven't, because that's none of anyone's business. But if you've ever paid taxes in this state or city, you paid that. You paid that $600 million. If you're one of the victims of the Flint water crisis, you paid that. You know who didn't pay for it? Rick Snyder and the people in the city council, Mayor Walling. The people who every single day knew that you were being fed something toxic that would harm you and harm your children and affect you for years or even decades to come. We won't know for decades just how much damage this will have done to the people who live here and to your children. None of them had to pay any of that. Do you know how many convictions there have been as a result of this obvious organized criminal malfeasance that has happened? Do you know anyone know how many convictions there have been?
0!
Nope, there's been one. A low-level environmental worker who got 1 year of probation and had to pay a $1,200 fine because she fudged some numbers on one of the many reports. Okay? And that's good. That's good that she got punished for that. But what about the politicians who were getting the reports showing just how toxic this water was, just how dangerous it was, and how criminally negligent and malfeasant it was to let the people of Flint drink this water over and over again, day after day, including the children in the school systems, where it was the worst because not only were the pipes going to the schools made of lead, but the pipes in the schools were made of lead. There hasn't been a single conviction. I know. The people of Flint have suffered as a result of this, and this all needs to change. Joe Jorgensen and libertarians running like Ben and James running for Congress and running up and down, we have the solutions to these problems. Republicans and Democrats, in their over 160 years of total control of every lever of power in government at the federal, the state, and the local and county levels, have created these harmful and inequitable and abusive outcomes as a direct result of the systems they have set up to benefit not you, but the well-heeled, politically connected billionaire cronies who own them and who buy and pay for them to be in office and who sponsor them and who hand them regulations and legislation and plans and policies that they know will cost you and benefit them. All of this ends when libertarians are in office because we recognize that the power always should have belonged to you. Taking the power out of your hands and centralizing it into Lansing and into DC is what has led to these harmful outcomes, because you, the people working together, would have never had these outcomes. The moment that you would have been told that the water was toxic, you would have said, well, I guess we're getting the water somewhere else then. You would have never done it because it affects you. We give the power and we put it back in your hands where it always belonged. Voting for Joe Jorgensen, voting for Ben Boren, and voting for James, who are running for Congress, voting for people who are working up and down the ballot here in Michigan and all other 50 states, this is the way that we take the power back for the people. This is the way. Hashtag this is the way. This is how we do it. And here is how you can help. Joe and I are running a campaign to put the power back in your hands. And the way that you can help, if you haven't already, join the Libertarian Party. lp.org/join. Sign up and become a member of the Libertarian Party. Look around you here. This event has been organized by affiliates and activists working with the Michigan Libertarian Party. They would be happy to let you know, if you haven't already, how you can join the Michigan Libertarian Party and your local party affiliates as well, so you can be part of the grassroots army for human liberty, fighting for a world set free in our time. That is how you can do that. The other way that you can help our campaign directly, go to joe20.com, sign up to fill out our volunteer form. We'd love to have you join our volunteer army that we are building. If you're able to make a donation, we would greatly appreciate it. It is your money that allows us to do bus tours and social media campaigns and do everything we can to get around the Republican system and their corrupt corporate crony media that is going to do their best to shut all of us out and make sure that people know that make sure people believe that they only have one of two options, both of whom suck and who work together every single day to screw all of us over. So folks, I know that there's only so much talking I can do, and I would much rather spend that time taking questions from y'all because I appreciate y'all coming out and I want to hear what you have to say and so I can answer it, and I think that's a better use of my time. But before I start on that, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the Michigan Libertarian Party and our campaign coordinators and everyone who has come out to help with this. It is y'all that are making this happen, and that's not a pander. This would not be happening if it were just up to me and up to Joe and up to our core team. It is the people working at the state and local level that are making this campaign happen. And that's why when we come here, we make a point of pointing out the people who are running at the local level and running at the congressional level and running at every level, because we are building a bottom-up grassroots campaign. And I greatly appreciate everyone coming out here and everything that you're doing to help. You are the power. And that means that the power should be back in your hands, and you have the ability through your activism, through making phone calls to radio stations, to letters to the editor, to sharing content from libertarians up and down the ticket. All of that stuff that you do every single day is how we promote the libertarian message. And I greatly appreciate everything you do. And with that, I would be happy to take your questions. If y'all can form a line over here by where the microphone is, any questions you have, I'll take as many as we can before I have to go. And someone will have to let me when I can go because I have no idea what time it is. And I will take questions in the orders they come in, and I look forward to it.
No, I won't. I'm loud enough anyway. I guess it's more of like a, what should I say? Because me and my husband were new to the Libertarian Party, and we're super excited. But I guess like my family who's voting like Democrat because they're sick of Trump, they say, well, every time I try to tell them like there's other options, you can vote for Joe Jorgensen, you can vote for anybody, and they always say, well, it's just a waste of your vote if you don't vote for Joe Biden. And I'm like, I don't see how it's a waste of my vote. So I guess my question would be like, how can I like combat that response when I talk about the Libertarian Party? and how I'm going to vote for you guys.
That's a great question. So there's two different ways, the main ways that you can go about it, and I leave it up to you which you think will be better. One is if someone keeps focusing on this is a wasted vote, you're just throwing your vote away. A wasted vote is voting for the people and the parties who created the problems that we're facing right now, every single day. And there are very few people who will say that this is an all Republican or all Democrat problems. Even some of the most partisan Democrats and Republicans recognize that there are some bad, bad characters in their ranks, bad politicians in their own ranks. So it's very easy to say, the Democrats and Republicans created this problem. And every election they show up and go, hey guys, it's me again. I know I created every problem that you're facing and then I made it worse, but this time, if you vote for me, this time I'm going to fix all of it. Can't fix it until you vote for me again. But this time, if you vote for me, I'll fix it. And frankly, if you don't vote for me, you're going to get this guy back here who I work with every day to screw you over. So definitely you got to vote for me or else you're going to get my friend back here. That is a shell game. That is a vote thrown away. It's actually worse than a vote thrown away because it's actually a vote against your own interest. It would be better for you to just write a nonsense name and then throw it in the trash. That at least wouldn't harm you and your interests and those of those you care about every single day. So a wasted vote is voting for the people who created these problems. Voting Libertarian or voting third party is the one time that you aren't wasting your vote. Another way to deal with it is when, so for example, if they say, we have to stop Trump, ask them what they don't like about Trump. And whatever they tell you, just tell them Joe Biden, that's true of him too. In fact, in some cases, it might even be worse. And when they go, well, yeah, he wasn't my choice, but we need him. Why? Because of Donald Trump, who we just acknowledged is roughly the same as Joe Biden. And you can do it the other way too, folks. If you have someone who goes, we have to vote for Donald Trump to stop Joe Biden, you can say, well, what don't you like about Joe Biden? And whatever they say about Joe Biden is probably equally or worse true about Donald Trump. That's the silver lining we have to the fact that the Republicans have given us two horrific choices. And the fact that every election cycle, the choices just get worse and worse and worse is that we can say, hey, listen, if you don't like this guy, you're going to hate the one you're voting for, and vice versa. So those are the two ways that I deal with it. And here's the reality. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Mindy, here's the reality, Mindy. There are some people that they're not going to be the I guess first acceptors of this, right? The people that we're going to get first are the ones who already recognize that they don't have good options. These are the people who either vote third party or who really hold their noses but don't and vote for one of the main parties, but they really don't like it, or the ones who or the ones who don't vote. Something like 40% of eligible voters don't vote. If we could get even a fraction of them, that gets us enough in the polls so that now a lot of those other voters go, oh, okay, well, they're a viable choice. I'll vote for them because they don't suck. But you can still do it by just pointing out that they're already wasting their vote and that the candidates that they hate are roughly the same as the candidates that they hate somewhat less.
Yup.
Yay!
Let's stop voting for evil. Voting for evil gets you more evil. Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for your question. Is there any other question? Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cohen. My name is Joey. I'm from Oakland County. I'm 24 years old. My question for you is, as somebody who is on the younger end of working in politics, I'd like to ask you for some advice or some guidance. Because of my age, I feel that older people generally don't take anything I have to say seriously when I talk to them about your campaign or Ms. Jorgensen or the Libertarian Party and policies as a whole. As somebody who is, like I said, on the other end of that spectrum, is there any advice or things that you possibly have done to kind of help, like, stake your, I guess, I can't think of the word, but, you know, your legitimacy in your position and, like, your feelings?
Do you mean me individually as a candidate, or just libertarians as a whole?
You know, as libertarians as a whole.
Okay, so libertarians as a whole. Here's the thing, like I just said to Mindy, right? Like I just said to Mindy, you know, there are going to be some people who just, until we are already in polling position to potentially make contention, there are going to be some who just look at us as, you know, a vote thrown away or some fringe thing, and they're not going to take it seriously. But the reality is that you can still reach them, and the best way to reach them, and this is old people, young people, anyone else, the best way you reach someone is arguing from their position. So it's been said many times that libertarians are better than the left on the things the left cares about. And we're better than the right on the things the right cares about. So we're better on things like the war on drugs, criminal justice, ending the wars. We're better on things like reducing the size of government, cutting taxes, cutting spending, cutting the debt. And for that matter, we're better than people in the middle on the things they care about. So instead of being confrontational or argumentative with them, we're trying to present it as this argument. Instead, we just meet them where they are. So, for example, if you're trying to, at any age, but let's say you're talking to older people, ask them what they care about. Ask them what their concerns are. And whatever they are, I'm taking a guess, because you're a libertarian, and most libertarians I know libertarianism about as well as I do. That's a benefit of knowing a lot of libertarians, is that we often really have the theory and the philosophy pretty well down. Now it's just a matter of the marketing or outreach end of it. Just apply libertarianism to it. People don't care what you know until they know that you care, and that's true across all different age groups. And so if there's already somewhat of a disconnect there, that they might not be taking you as seriously because of your age or whatever reason, if you demonstrate that you care about them, you listen, you ask them what their concerns are, and whatever they say, even if when you listen you go, oh gosh, that's terrible, I hate that, listen to what their actual concern is. So instead of hearing the rhetoric, the politically charged rhetoric they throw at you, listen to what they're concerned about. Are they concerned about safety? Are they concerned about their health? Are they concerned about their financial well-being? Are they concerned about their kids or their grandkids? Whatever it is they're concerned about, you can reflect that back to them. Yes, what you care about matters. And I agree with your concerns that you have there. And here is how Republicans and Democrats have created those problems or made them worse. And here is how our common sense libertarian solutions can fix it. I'm not going to pretend it works every time. If you're good, it'll work half the time. If you are really, really good at what you do, it'll work half the time. If you're like most people, it won't work half the time, or it won't work most of the time, or at the very least, they won't immediately sign up. But if nothing else, Joey, you planted a seed. Now you're not just some fringe character. You're someone who heard what they had to say, you listened to them, you reflected back, you understood what their concerns were, and then you presented something that actually didn't sound too bad. And if nothing else, you've planted a seed so that when they hear future things about libertarians, they go, oh yeah, that's like that Joey kid who told me about this and that and this and that. So if nothing else, you planted seeds, and a few of them, you might get them and they go, wow, you know what? I am going to vote for them. I don't want to vote for terrible candidates anymore. So that's, we just got to keep at it. We just got to keep at it, and I appreciate your question. Thank you. Oh, thank you, man. Is there anyone else?
How you doing?
Great. How are you?
My name's Dylan.
If you can either hold it or lean, or you don't have to hold it. If you can just lean forward a little bit more. I know you're a taller guy. I just can't.
Yeah, the world's not built for me. I've come to understand that and accept it. So, my question for you is this: what would your administration, you and Joe, do to address the issues in our military that resulted in the death of Vanessa Gillen? There are issues in every branch of our military where superiors take advantage of people below them, whether it be for personal gain or sexual desires. It's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
So what would you two do to end that?
Any system that has that much secrecy is going to lead to bad outcomes. If everyone knows that what they're doing is being done under the cover of night, where it's actually legally required for others outside of it not to really know what's going on, that's going to lead to bad outcomes. So I would defer to Joe on policy specifics when it comes to military reform and government reform in general, but the overarching theme of it is going to be opening up, not just within the military ranks, but to the public as well. Because what happened to Vanessa, right? What happened to Vanessa and what happened to, her name escapes me, but it was a lady that was in Iraq. That was serving in Iraq, and she complained about abuse, and she ended up murdered, and they ruled it a suicide. This is something that goes on over and over and over again. And as you said, we hear it a lot, and we hear it from people often in hushed tones because they're still in active duty and can't talk about it because of the rules that are in place. So here's what you do. You open up the process so that people know what's going on. You empower whistleblowers so that instead of them fearing criminal prosecution or fearing being blackballed or being prosecuted in some way for what they're doing, instead, whistleblowing is encouraged because whistleblowing is how we have reform. So to that end, when people come forward, when someone like a Chelsea Manning comes forward, and I know that's different than the specific thing you're talking about, but anytime someone in the military or in government comes forward and says, here is documented evidence of bad things that are happening, not only do we not punish them for telling the people the truth, we put them on a pedestal and make sure that they have the same bully pulpit we do and being able to promote that.
Yeah!
What's that?
They give them a promotion.
Yeah, give them a promotion. And that's the thing. That's what we need to do. We need to inject transparency, and we need to empower whistleblowers in those situations. And I hope that answered your question. Thank you. Next question. Hey, Joey, how are you doing?
Actually, it's Jason.
Jason.
That's okay.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
I understand.
I got the first initial right.
You did. And it's a great first initial. It goes with Jorgensen.
That's Jay's all over.
Jay's all over the place. My question is, I hear a lot from one particular side that libertarians are party for the rich. They want to take away welfare. They want to take away food stamps. They want to take away all these things, and they don't have any proposal for how they're just going to walk in and take it all away. And I know that's not the plan. I mean, obviously you can't do that day one, walk in, change everything, and have there be any structure anywhere else. What is the libertarian plan for scaling back the big government? Is there a sense of logic or a sense of order to it? Or is it just, we'll make it up once we get there?
Right, that's an excellent question. So, first of all, let's address that first part, the party of the rich. Everyone here who has a net worth of $1 million or more, raise your hand. This is, if someone can document this, that I don't see any other hands raised, which is terrible because something isn't lining up here, because I'm often told we are the party of the uber rich, and yet I'm not seeing a lot of millionaires here. So I'm glad we've thoroughly debunked that. Now, getting to the meat of your question about welfare reform and government reform and how do we do it. Harry Brown, who my running mate ran with as his VP pick back in 1996. Harry Brown said, and I always butcher this phrase every time I say it, but Harry Brown said, here's what government does to the poor. Government shows up and beats them up within an inch of their life and takes their loaf of bread and steals their wallet. And then the government takes a few crumbs from that loaf of bread and hands the crumbs back sprinkles it on the person they just beat up, and takes some of the money out of their wallet and uses it to buy them a crutch, throws the crutch at them and says, hey, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have those crumbs and you wouldn't have that crutch. No, if it wasn't for you, I'd still have my loaf of bread and I'd still have my money and I wouldn't need a crutch. So how do we apply that to the welfare state? How do we apply that to the entitlement state? The answer is not for someone to show up to that person and go, you poor person, look what they've done to you. We'll fix this. And we take their crumbs and their crutch and run away. That's not how you fix this. That's not harm reduction. That not only makes things worse, but it makes people hate us and ensures that we'll never be trusted anywhere in government ever again, and any reforms we introduce are completely undone and reversed. Here is why we handle the fact that so many people have been put in a social safety net and then had all the ladders removed so they can't get out of it. You put the ladders back. You don't focus on the net. You put the ladders back. I've done door knocking tours in housing projects and other marginalized communities, and I haven't met a single person in the hundreds of people that I've spoken to, including in housing projects, people that had no reported income, more on that later, had no reported income and were living on welfare and food stamps and housing assistance. Not a single one of them said, man, I really like welfare. Are you coming to tell me you're going to increase welfare? Because I want more welfare. I didn't go there and even mention welfare. I went there to talk about criminal justice reform and occupational licensing. And here's what I found out. Every single one of them, almost every single one of them, had a side hustle. These were incredibly industrious people who had businesses. They were trying to pull themselves out of poverty. I had a business for the better part of 20 years. The number one thing of business is marketing. You know what they couldn't do? Market. Do you know why? Because they were doing it illegally. Because they couldn't afford the occupational licensing laws, and they couldn't comply with the zoning laws that didn't allow them to do business where they were. So they do it illegally. They do it hush-hush. They do it word of mouth, but not word of mouth where it can go to anyone, but word of mouth where you got to trust the person that you're dealing with. And they never made enough money to actually grow and get out of the projects and build up their communities and drag their loved ones out of poverty with them Because if they did, the police show up and take everything from them with civil asset forfeiture, and a trial date may or may not ever come, but they just lost everything and they're back at square one. So you have government criminalizing poor and working class people who can't afford the thousands or sometimes tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in the cost of complying with the laws required to be able to start a business. So that's just one of many examples of what we can do to put those ladders back so that we reduce the number of people on welfare, not by cutting off their welfare, but by letting them grow out of welfare because they never wanted to be on it in the first place. Give them their loaf of bread back, give them their wallet back, let them heal so they don't need the crutch anymore, and we won't have that problem to begin with. Not only does it reduce government, but it also reduces taxes for everyone, because if we're cutting spending at the same time as increasing the potential for revenue, that allows everyone else to pay less in taxes. And of course, if you're already here, I probably don't need to tell you that all taxation is theft, and Joe and I are running on a platform of ending not just the IRS, but all taxation. If government is to exist, it is to be voluntarily funded, or it is providing things that no one wanted because there wasn't enough of a demand for people to pay for it. So I hope that answered your question. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Timothy Teagan. I'm a Boogaloo boy, 22 years old. This is a question I ask myself nearly every day.
Okay.
The divide in our country is becoming more and more self-evident. The divisive tactics are based on perpetual fear. This is especially true in my peer group. Many of us are losing faith in the American political system. Many of us believe most of the politicians are enemy of the people. I want to know, how can we restore hope to my country?
Well, here's the thing, and thank you for that question, Timothy. There's a reason that the divide is growing ever worse. It's because it has to. Republicans and Democrats have total control of every lever of power in government. And it doesn't take a genius to step back and say, wait a second. It seems like no matter who I vote for, I get pretty much the same thing. The rhetoric might be a little different, but my taxes go up, the spending goes up, the debt goes up, the number of laws go up, the amount of growing of the gap between those who have and those who have not continues to rise, the cost of healthcare continues to rise, the cost of higher education continues to rise, the educational outcomes in public education continue to go down. All of the indicators that are bad continue to go up, and all of the indicators that are good continue to go down. And it doesn't seem to matter which of these two get elected. And I keep seeing them work together every day. I'm starting to think they're both in on it. And I'm starting to think that it's intentional. So here's what they do. They keep everyone at each other's throats because they have to. As the daylight in policy between Republicans and Democrats dims down to the point where there is no substantive difference between a Democrat and a Republican, to the point where I could list out a given politician's policies and you'd have maybe a 50-50 chance of telling me whether it's a Democrat or Republican. As that gap narrows between them, the theater of difference between them has to widen and widen and widen, so that now you're not just voting for a liberal or a conservative, you're voting for a filthy America-hating communist or an evil dictator fascist Nazi, because if they allow you for even a moment to get off of each other's throats and take a step back and say, oh no, you're all friends, you're all in on this, you're screwing us together, their entire system would fall apart, because their power and their influence and the idea of their inevitability that they'll win every election, it's completely illusory. The power's in your hands. You are the power. You, the American people, can decide who wins office. So they have to do it that way. It is a necessity of the system that the Republicrats have worked hand in hand to create for the past several decades, requires not only for there to be a massive and growing divide among the American people, but for that rate of division to widen and widen and widen ever more, ever so. So the way that you get hope back is by you share a hopeful message. You say to people, it doesn't have to be this way. Like I said to Mindy, you say, what don't you like about this side? Okay, well, this side does it too. Here's the side that doesn't do any of that. And again, this is where you come in. This is where the grassroots army comes in. Meet people where they are. When they complain to you about those evil Democrats, or they complain to you about those evil Republicans, and you go, that's terrible, these people sound horrible, tell me what they're doing to you. And then they start talking to you about bad Republican policy, empathize with them. You don't have to start off by saying, yeah, well, you know, your side did that too. You don't have to do that, because they didn't do that. And they take that as a personal attack. If I tell you your party did something, then you might take that as me saying you did something. So instead go, that's terrible. That's a terrible, terrible thing that has happened. And I see what the policy is that led to that. Here's how that happened. The policies that led to that. You don't have to say which party did it. You just say these are the policies that did it. And here are our common sense solutions of how to fix it. And when they go, well, what about my side? I'll go, I don't know. What has your side done? And then they can look into it and see, oh no, my side did all the bad things that led me to hate just that one side. And my side worked directly with them as well. So that's how you do it. The message of hope is that the only way that we're going to come together as American people is if we give up the political theater narrative of the Republicrats. That only serves them. They're not fighting. Do you see Donald Trump and Joe Biden fighting in the streets? Do you see Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell fighting in the streets? No. Because A, it would last 5 seconds before they all passed out, and B, they work together every single day. They work together every single day. The Republicans and Democrats agree on two things. One is that every day is a special new day to screw over the American people more than ever before. And the other thing they agree on is that no one should be able to challenge their position of authority. And that is how it plays out in their policies and their rhetoric and the fighting that happens in the streets that you saw. You told me you were in Minneapolis. You saw it firsthand. Oh, Detroit, yes. And you saw how it played out every single day. People that have bought into the narrative and they're fighting each other. So here is what happens. I don't know if I have time for that. Is there a question behind you? Okay, so so here is a analogy I use a lot. Timothy, imagine if you and I go out to dinner, okay? And we go and we get out and we're having a great time at dinner. And someone comes in and hits me with a baseball bat. No one do this, by the way. Someone comes and hits me in the head with a baseball bat and shoots you a bunch of time in the chest and runs off. Okay? I'm in the hospital for weeks. I have bleeding on the brain. I have a massive concussion. Weeks later, I'm still dealing with neurological issues. I'll probably always be affected by it, but I survive. You die on the operating table multiple times. You have multiple organ failure. You had organs removed. You don't breathe right. You'll never breathe the same again. You also have neurological issues and you have massive PTSD from what happened. But you have survived. Many months later, you're out of the hospital and you survived. Certainly much worse for wear, but you survived. We both survived. Then we get together and we're commiserating over what happened. And I go, man, I'm just glad we're okay. This was a terrible thing that happened, but I'm glad we're okay. And you go, well, I'm not okay, but I'm glad that we're both here. I'm glad that we both made it. I obviously got it worse than you did, but I'm just, I'm glad that we're both here. And I go, well, wait a second. You said that you got the worst of it. I got a concussion, man. I was in the hospital. I was in for weeks. I was in and out of consciousness. I still have dizziness and auras and migraines and all sorts of stuff. I don't think that how you can say that you got it worse. And you go, wait a second. Of course I got it worse. What how could you say that I didn't get it worse? I almost died. Terrible things happened to me. I'm never going to breathe right again. I've lost organs. If anything, you benefited from the fact that you just got hit in the head with a baseball bat and I got shot multiple times. And I go, well, wait a minute, pal. Maybe if you'd been nice to the guy, he'd have just hit you in the head with a baseball bat. That is the political discourse that we have in this country over and over again. We have it on racial lines, we have it on income lines, we have it on geographical lines, we have it on class lines, we have it on age lines. Every single way that you can divide people, we have these arguments every single day. What if instead we both said, wow, yeah, you did get it worse. Let's go find that guy and make sure he never does that to anyone else again. That is what they fear. They fear us, instead of fighting each other every day over who's getting it worse and who's getting it better, stepping back for a second and saying, wait a second, we're all victims here, and they're all the victimizers. None of these people are our friends, and we're going to stop them. A vote for Joe Jorgensen is a vote to step back, and a vote for Ben Bourne and James and everyone else that's running as libertarians up and down the ballot in all 50 states plus DC is a vote for saying, we're on to your game, and you are not going to let it happen anymore. So I hope that answered your question.
The honor to speak, sir.
Thank you, absolutely.
Hello, sir. My name's Zakari. I'm from Detroit.
Your name's what? Sorry.
Zakari.
Kari?
My question about what kind of backpacking off of what he said in the world and how the country is right now. We have all these cities that are chaos and rioting and fighting, just like you said. And there's pressure on both sides of sending the federal government in to solve this problem and take all these people out. And there's pressures on the other side to just let these cities do what they want and let the local government figure it out. And there's obviously arguments for both sides, so I kind of just want to know how the Libertarian Party feels about that, of solving national crises like this in cities that are rioting and people are fighting. Because when I was in Detroit, I had far-right individuals brandish a firearm at me, and then I had Antifa put my address on the internet and show up in my house. And what do we do as a party to solve this issue when things have gotten so tense and hot in these cities as a federal movement and as a bigger government, the upper government part of it? What do we do about these tense local issues and these people's lives that are in such conflict?
Absolutely. So let's look at the conditions that led to this first, Kari. We have federal control of what our policing looks like in our communities. Well, again, it didn't take a genius to show us what federal control of something would lead to. Federal control of policing has led to the war on drugs. It has led to the military surplus program, where our police departments are not only given military equipment, but they're given military training from military contractors on how to use military equipment for military applications, and then they're sent to go police our streets and neighborhoods, and not expected to have that training and that equipment affect how they deal with the public. We have civil asset forfeiture, where the government steals money from you if you're accused of a crime, even before you're convicted. You know, the time when you could have actually used your money to be able to pay for your defense, and they use your own stuff to help pay for your prosecution. And if by some miracle you're still found not guilty or the charges are dropped, you then have to pay money you don't have to sue the government for your own stuff back, even though it was just proven in court that they never should have taken it from you in the first place. So we would end that plan as well. You have no-knock raids. You have mandatory minimum sentencing. You have the school-to-prison pipeline. You have this massive military police complex. All of this has come from the federal government being involved in policing. Now, here is how the rioting that we've seen has been fostered and to some extent manufactured by the people in positions of power. And this is why I'm glad when I see Boot Boys and when I see Black Panthers and NFAC and I see people at these protests arm, I'm very happy, because a lot of what I'm about to talk about doesn't happen because the conditions aren't right for it. When unarmed protesters show up to protest, the police concentrate all of their forces where that protest is happening. All of their personnel, almost all of their personnel, is put around that. And what happens? The very second that they go past the curfew, or they break a noise ordinance, or whatever other contrived reason they can come up with, now they're firing tear gas. Something they can't do in foreign countries to enemy combatants because that violates the Geneva Convention, but they can do it here to you, the taxpayer who pays their bills. And they go and they give the pepper balls and the tear gas, and they tase people, and they shoot people, and they lock them up and violate their habeas corpus. There are people that were held in New York City for weeks without even a stated reason for arresting them, and they do all of these things. And often those protests turn into riots because people who showed up angrily but peacefully, angrily protesting police brutality, are now being brutalized by the police. Wonder of wonders, that leads to bad things. But what also happens? The police are all here, and the entire rest of the city that they're supposed to have jurisdiction over, the city that they often have disarmed through gun control, is now left completely out in the open for opportunists to show up to loot and to pillage and to rob. People that don't give a crap about police brutality, people that don't care about the Black Lives Matter movement or the Boogaloo movement or anything else. They're there for their Lego set that they didn't want to pay for. And so they show up and they're stealing and they're robbing small businesses and homeowners who can't defend themselves because of gun control. And then the police who created those conditions from the beginning all the way to the end show up, their government officials show up and go, look at this chaos. You people wanted us to be accountable, and now look what's happening. They're rioting in the streets. We need more power. We need more money. We need more military equipment. We need more militarized training. We need less accountability. We need to be able to squash these terrible anarchist rioters before they ever even start. And a scared public that just watched their city burn to the ground often says, okay, fine, I guess that's the way that we're going to go. Some would say that that is malfeasance. Some would say that that's just ineptitude. I tend to think that they are in on it. Either way, they have to go. And that is how you fix this problem. You fix it by getting rid of the people that led to these conditions and fostered them to happen in the first place. So I hope that answered your question. Yeah! Thank you. We can. I'm sorry. We can take this one more, or one more after this. Okay. Yeah, we'll take one more after this, and sorry, we'll take one more after this, and then I will mingle a little bit, and then we have to hit the road off to the next thing. But I really do appreciate you guys coming out, and I will try to answer as many questions in the crowd as I can. And I thank you again.
First, I want to say, found a pair of keys. If somebody's missing keys, I have them. And then also, I just wanted to say, we all heard about the loss of your dog.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
We just wanted to say that we're all thinking about you. We got you this card here just to have something to remember us by. Let us know that we care about you, and what happens to you, we feel it happens to all of us.
Thank you. That means a lot. I'm gonna say very little because the last thing you want is for me to start crying here. Thank you, and thank you. That's what I'm gonna say. And I don't want to break down. I love Axel very much. I had him for 12 years. Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you. I'm an actual person. Yeah, I actually. Well, then good. If this is what you wanted to see, then you got it. Thank you. So we have one more question. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were the. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm Andy.
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 Andy's great to meet you.
Thanks. Glad that you're here.
Thank you.
So it's unlikely that we're probably going to get rid of all the criminals in Washington anytime soon. I'm really hoping you guys get elected, but what's your plan and what's Dr. Jorgensen's plan to deal with these idiots?
So assuming that we get elected and we don't see a libertarian sweep of all of Congress, which, by the way, it would be impossible. So even if we saw even if Joe and I win in a massive 50-state landslide and libertarians win, every single congressional race that's on the books for this election, we still won't get the Senate because only roughly a third of the seats are up. So even if we have the most blowout election that any political party has ever had in American history, which, hey, I'm out to God's ear. If that happens, then we'll be in a great place. But if that happens, even if we completely control every single seat in the House of Representatives, we'll still have to deal with 2/3 of the Senate. There's at least some likelihood that we won't win every single election that we have. Whatever ends up happening, when Joe is elected and she's in the White House, and we're dealing with whatever Republican majority we are looking at in either the House and Senate or even just the Senate, the beauty or silver lining of the fact that Congress has, over the past several decades, abdicated their authority to the White House in the form of creating one regulatory agency after the next, one alphabet soup agency after the next, giving them nearly unlimited regulatory authority, and basically abdicating their legislative authority to the White House. The silver lining of that is that when Jo Jorgensen gets elected, she can just go in and start undoing that. We've heard of the pen. I have a pen and paper. Well, Jo will have a giant eraser and I will be standing behind her with an even larger shredder. We'll get very large, cartoony looking office equipment that will do the uses, and we can just start shredding and undoing all of those bad executive orders, all of those bad regulations from the various alphabet boys. We can fire entire agencies and refuse to rehire anyone because she has the authority as president to hire and fire as she sees fit. All of this can happen at the executive level. And when the American people see the immediate and profound benefit of having the government out of their lives and having the money and the power and the decision-making and freedom back in their hands where it always belonged, and we get the massive political capital from people immediately and in a profound and measurable way, living freer and safer and happier and healthier and better lives and thriving and prospering in ways that were not previously possible, we'll be able to ride that all the way to Capitol Hill and say, and draw a very clear line in the swamp there and say, we're standing on this line. We and those working with us in Congress to fix this at the legislative level, and even through some constitutional amendments like, term limits. We standing on this side I know how to use an applause line. We standing on this side are working every day to remove the boot from the neck of the people so that they can thrive in ways that you never allowed them to do. Or you can stand on this side of our swamp line and stay on the group of people, on the side of the people that are working to keep that boot on the neck of the American people and to allow for continued needless, unnecessary suffering for no other reason than as a cynical ploy to preserve your own power and wealth and influence. I think we win that battle. And if we don't win that battle negotiating with Congress, we win that battle talking with the voters every single day. I know they're trying to get me off. We win that battle every single day. Can you imagine having to work with me? We win that battle with the voters in the next election cycle, and the election cycle after that, and the election cycle after that. We put pressure on Republicrats, and we can't pander to them, and we don't try to meet them part way. We say, here is how we're going to do it. Here are the benefits of it. The people are on our side. Now, do you want to work with us, or do you want to get run over? That's how we work on that, and I hope that answered your question. And folks, with that, I now have my sign-off music. They're going to physically come up here and remove me if I don't stop. Thank you again for coming out. Joe20.com. You are the power. Thank you again.